we talked about basically the quarterback position, the running backs, and the wide receivers last time we're on here. Now it's time to get some trench talk and talk about the offensive linemen, the defensive line, and also we'll maybe do a little bit of linebacking talk. What do you say about that, Dave?
Sounds great to me.
Sounds great to y'all. And folks, thank you guys so much for the love and support and making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every single day. And with that being said, let's go on with the show.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. As at the top of the hour, it's your boy Drake here, and today I'm joined by Mr. David Wise, who's looking a little very New York Yankees-esque today. Dave, what's going on with you, my guy? We're inspired by the Derek Jeter documentary that's coming out now. Is that why you're rocking the hat?
We are. We're inspired by that. Got the little Derek Jeter logo on the hat here. Best team in baseball. You know, it's a good feeling right now.
God, I hate you so much. For those of you that don't know, if you're new to the show, Dave is a Yankees fan and a Patriots fan. He's from the Massachusetts area, so wrestle with that how you will, but we're not here to talk about baseball. It's a different segment, different podcast. Actually, I can recommend a few of them for y'all at the end of the show. Today, let's talk about the big boys up front. We gave them a little bit of love, at the end of the last podcast, but there's a lot of big boys out there. We got to make sure we talk about each and every single one of them. As I said before, the parameters were net positive, net neutral, or same as last year, or net regression. So, Dave, why don't we go with you first? How do you feel about the offensive line heading into 2022?
Yeah, so at the end of the segment for last episode, I kind of talked about the offensive line position as it relates to the production of the running back room this time. And I'll talk more. I can talk all day about that. The run blocking last year was nothing short of awful. It really was. Like, Atkins has, each year he's been here, made the offensive line better, but last year the run blocking was still really bad. You had some impressive pass blocking performances from guys like Dillan Gibbons and Brady Scott, but other than that, the pass blocking was just kind of across the board. I guess you could say average, maybe in some areas slightly above average. The run blocking was not good, though. I ran down last episode. I'll do the same thing again right now. The top five snaps, the blockers, the offensive linemen with the 5 most snaps on our team, graded as follows in run blocking: 61.2, 64.3, 66.3 team high, 42.7, and 58.7. That's bad.
And I astutely actually knew immediately when you said 42.7. I'm like, is that DLT?
It is, right.
Yeah. And that was where you saw where the knee injury kind of hampered him developmentally wise, because that definitely took a lot of his athleticism away. And he was your best lineman the year before too, as well.
Right. And so here's the thing: going into last year, I think based on what we'd seen the first year, Atkins worked a miracle, is what we saw his first year here. So I think going into last season, we thought, well, hell, if he can do that quickly on campus, the sky's the limit last year. And he did make the line better, but he has some more tools to work with this year. And he has a lot of guys that's the same guys still in the system. And to me, this has to be a net positive on the team. I don't think there's much chance of regression here, with a lot of continuity back from last year among the better players on the offensive line and some important additions to the team. Just Atkins himself, I think, has proven he deserves our trust in terms of not just recruiting, but his offensive line development. Obviously, the concerning thing to me is he's now the offensive coordinator. Is that going to take time away from his offensive line duties in any way? I don't think so. And I just based on how bad the run blocking was last year and how good the running backs were in spite of it, I expect the run blocking to get better. If the pass blocking stays the same, that means that the offensive line has gotten better just by virtue of the run blocking improving. But I do expect both to improve. I expect you have more specifics in terms of the guys that are coming in, and I expect you agree.
I do agree. I do think it actually is a huge net positive. I'm also on the train where that I don't think him being offensive coordinator is going to detract from him being his duties on the offensive line, primarily because we didn't raise that question with Kane Dillingham, and we did see the improvement of Jordan Travis as a passer. And also, I mean, he's done it before. He was the run game coordinator and offensive line coach at Charlotte. And probably from his first year here, he'll probably can tell you he's had a lot more talent at Charlotte on the offensive line than when he actually first got here. Before I go a little further into that, though, Dave, you know what actually was the number one offensive lineman for pass blocking?
Was it not Dillan Gibbons?
No, it was your boy. It was Mr. Brady Scott.
Wow.
At an 86.3. Dillan Gibbons, though, was third at 83.3. Then you also had Dante Lucas, who's no longer with the team anymore. But overall, the team was set by 65, 66 and above when it comes to pass blocking. And that's something that's huge for our team, especially now with actually seeing overall with these wide receiver transfers coming in with a Micah Pittman and Johnny Wilson, as well as Deuce Spann and also Winston Wright Jr., who see the photo today of him, like, wearing number 1. He actually might be ready for game 1. So that would actually be great. But as you said, we got a lot of solid additions along the offensive line from the transfer portal, whether that be Dimitri Emmanuel, who was formerly at Charlotte, who had his best blocking grade actually while Atkins was offensive coordinator down there. You also have a Jackson Turrentine who's coming from South Carolina, Kaden Lyles, who actually can come in and actually let Maurice Smith develop more as a true center and also gain a little bit more weight. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see someone like a Robert Scott actually not be starting probably heading into the season, even though I do think he's going to be a NFL draft quality prospect. But to me, it's a huge net positive because not only do we have solid options up front, we have solid depth everywhere. I think we have 19 kids in scholarship now for offensive line. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Almost a quarter of the scholarship allotment, an awful lot of it. And you didn't even mention Bless Harris, who is probably
that kid's going to be so good too.
Probably going to be starting for us. So you brought in 3 to 4 transfers who are immediately going to be plugged into the 3, if not the 2 deep on the offensive line. Like you mentioned, there's going to be a competition at offensive line spots. It's been the case in the last half decade at FSU where we're just plugging in the warm body that's least of a turnstile. And that is no longer the case right now. And so we have quality options. We have more quality depth. And I expect this to be a above average, if not good offensive line, which in recent past at FSU is remarkable, if not unheard of.
I mean, it's going to be astounding to me. So then I do kind of want to ask you, now today is July 19th, July 20th, as most of y'all are listening to this. Dave, what is going to be your starting 5 when we take the field against Duquesne? Actually, no, against LSU. I feel like Duquesne, I know I give Mike Norvell and company a lot of flack for playing with their food, but I do think you will see the true offensive line maybe for the majority of the LSU game, maybe the first 2 or 3 series against Duquesne. So I do want to ask, what is your starting 5 for this offensive line for Florida State heading into 2022?
Well, I do think Robert Scott will be starting game 1. I think it's probably his spot to lose until he loses it. Dillan Gibbons, obviously. It's going to be interesting to see whether it's Mo Smith or Kaden Lyles. I like the way Kaden Lyles looked in practice. He just looks like a man, a mountain of a man. And having that at the center position isn't always the case. We had Fabien, who was big, trying it, and that didn't work out. But if Kaden Lyles is, more up to the task than that, I love a guy that big at the center position. Darius Washington, obviously. And I guess it's Bless Harris, huh? Is it the Bless Harris show?
I mine's a little more different than yours, but I do have basically from left tackle spot, I do think you'll probably have. I saw today that Robert Scott his weight is listed at 247 Sports through the FSU media guide at 334 pounds. I will take him at left tackle now, just from that number alone. Because if you saw, I think it was the year previously, he's very committed and is a hard worker in Josh Norm's conditioning program. To the right of him, I'll put Dillan Gibbons there. So left tackle, left guard, center. I'm really torn on this because Kaden Lyles, he wasn't in the best of shape when he got here. He did look solid, decent in practice, but you can tell he was still adjusting to all that. But we heard the same about Dillan Gibbons. I'm going to probably have him there in center spot, mainly because I want Mo Smith to get a little bit bigger. I think he did increase his weight to 288 pounds. I would like him to get around a 305, 310 range because a big athletic Mo Smith is the equivalent of a dancing bear to me. Then next at the right guard spot, I want Dimitri Emmanuel there. I think that's someone that he is going to be a solidified starter for the rest of the season. I mean, you didn't bring him from Charlotte for no reason. And then lastly, I'm going to have, it is the Bless Harris show. I'm going to have Bless Harris at the right tackle spot. So that's basically from left to right, that's going to be that's Drake's starting 5 on the offensive line.
It's a big line, and that's a much more talented line than we've had in 5 years.
more talented line that we had in 5 years. And also, you know what's more talented than anything else, Dave?
What's that, Drake?
The people over at built.com selling their built bars, their built puffs. As y'all know, I am the Terry Barcia Casanova. You have Dave over there who's the cookie dough connoisseur, and Maxwell is not with us currently. He is the Brigadier General of the Peanut Butter Brownie Brigade. But if you like those 3 flavors, folks, there are 16 delicious flavors to choose from. And as always, folks, the puffs are delicious. Try them. I just got a box of the s'mores puffs, fire. Churro puffs, fire. Birthday cake puffs, not too sweet, which is what I was worried about.
That.
But they actually taste very good. And I will say, to me, it tastes like an improved version of a Pete. But folks, don't take my word for it. Head over to built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, and you'll get a 15% bonus off of your order using promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 at built.com. Let's get healthy together. All right, Dave. So before we go off over to the other side of the football, I think maybe we should touch briefly on the tight ends real quick because they also will be out there blocking as well along the offensive line. We don't have to make this super long because we all know it like begins and ends with Cameron McDonald, and then maybe we'll see a Jackson West or a Brian Courtney emerge. How do you feel about this position group real quick?
I feel good about Cam McDonald. I think he's, if nothing else, a solid option at tight end. I don't think he's the best tight end we've had, in 10, 20 years or anything like that. But I do think if he's the tight end that you have in the room that's supposed to be the leader of the room, I don't think you're in bad shape, and I don't think we're in bad shape. Behind him, I'm horrified. If Cam McDonald gets injured, I'm going to be really, I don't think we'll see tight ends except for obvious blocking situations. That's how I feel about the room.
So basically your basically stays about the same. Is that where you're going to be at
about the same as last year? Right.
I think we'll go with the slight net positive, mainly because like if you see overall, like Cam McDonald actually might be asked to do a little bit more with Johnny Wilson being in the fold. You might see him line up in those sets too, even though he's not one of your bigger tight ends. But I do think we'll see something a little bit more out of a Jackson West and a maybe even Wyatt Rector too. Actually has earned that scholarship. He actually has become a decent role player in special packages for the team. But let's not go on from the trenches to the other side of the ball. Let's talk about defensive line. And defensive line, this might be the strongest position group on your team aside from running backs. And this is a position group that, quite frankly, the first 2 names that we know of Fabien Lovett and Robert Cooper leading the way. But depth-wise, you have a lot more options down there. So tell the folks a little bit more about what you think and what you'll see from the defensive line position group in 2022.
Let me correct what you said. You said outside the running back group, this may be the most talented position. This will be both the most talented and the best position on the team, and it's really not close. Fabien Lovett, like you said, and Robert Cooper, those are 2 of the best players on the team overall, point blank. Having Malcolm Ray as a third option, that's a big boy. And he's
going to be good too.
He is going to be good. I actually can't wait to see him play. Like, for example, if one of the 2 starting interior linemen were to get injured, having Malcolm Ray in there is just a blessing. That's a great third option to have. And we haven't even gotten to the defensive end spot. Dennis Briggs is kind of an in-betweener. Obviously, he can play inside, he can play outside. But if people recall, before Dennis Briggs got injured, he was the most effective pass rusher on our football team. And that includes Jermaine Johnson. Going into last year, I think we had extremely high hopes for the defensive line. We had a lot of expectations for Jermaine Johnson, a player coming over from Georgia. I don't think anyone predicted it would be like it was. So just in terms of if we're doing this exercise as looking forward from last year versus looking forward from this year, I think I'm probably just as excited this year. I think I'd probably say about the same this year. I'm not going to say that as though Jared Verse necessarily is going to be Jermaine Johnson. I don't expect him just as based on my expectation of Jermaine Johnson going into last season. I don't expect the same of Jared Verse, but I do expect him to be starting game 1 and to get better as the season goes on. Behind him, you have Dennis Briggs. And on the other side, there's a guy that I'm going to let you talk about him because you're really excited about him, and Derek McClendon. And behind him, I'm excited to see Patrick Payton. And we have Dante Anderson came in. There's some exciting players at the position. There's known quantities at the position, and the interior D line is among the best in the ACC, if not the country. And I expect that to be the single best position group on the team. It's possible could be better than last year, but I'm going to say about the same.
So then do you think Jared Verse starts game 1?
Yes.
Okay. That's the main thing I kind of wanted to ask you, because I was in the camp originally before the spring game where I thought that he would probably be a reserve, like start to get his feet wet a little bit with Power 5 football and then come on probably after the Louisville game, which is the third game. Now, after seeing spring game and seeing the dude in workouts, now that man's going to start game 1.
See what that guy looked like on Twitter yesterday? Those pictures going around?
Him and Trey Benson, those dudes are jacked. Those dudes are jacked as hell. But no, I mean, I'm right there with you. I lean towards same or above. I might say slight regression, mainly because you do lose a first-round pick in Jermaine Johnson.
But looking forward, in terms of looking forward this year compared to looking forward last year, not this looking forward this year compared to looking back last year, like take the expectations of Jermaine Johnson from what you thought he might be going into the season last year versus what you think Jared Verse could be this year, I think is the way we're looking at it.
I mean, that's fair. I think I was a little more higher on Jermaine Johnson, but that's fair. I mean, like, so I will, go with the same. I am a big fan of Derek McClendon. I think that's someone that will definitely he's shown that he's put in the work. He actually probably will be. I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes, and it's definitely being a little more, not wasn't looking for. If he gets competitive with Jared Verse to solidify that starting spot, even though Jared Verse, you see what he did at Albany. You see him chase down Sean Tucker in that highlight clip. That kid's going to start. But then you're right. You look at Malcolm Ray, who's someone that we knew was a developmental piece. It will take several years to probably get him on the field. It's been 3 years now, and Odell loves the kid and so he's actually going to probably show us this year. And then one name you didn't mention was Jared Jackson, the Louisville transfer, actually, who's actually going to be a rotational piece as well with a Fabien Lovett and a Robert Cooper. And he slimmed down. So you know what? I'm actually excited overall for this entire group because what did Jimbo always say? The game is won and decided by the trenches. One of your favorite things to talk about?
Yes, he did. And our defensive line isn't going to be beat by a lot of offensive lines we face. And Dennis Briggs, you'll hear it first, might be the best player on the team this year.
You think Jared Verse will be the best player on the team this year?
I think Dennis Briggs might be the best player on the team this year.
Dennis Briggs. Yeah, I mean, do you have any concerns, though, about his injury, come back from his injury, though?
Of course. If he stays healthy, I mean, it's the same thing that we talk about with Jordan Travis, though. Like, if he stays healthy, well, assuming Dennis Briggs stays healthy, again, last year, he had an 83.9 grade in pass rush. Jermaine Johnson was a 78.1. If he's able to replicate that kind of performance and stay healthy doing it, and he's a year older, another year in the system, that's a dangerous combination. Could be the best player on the team.
Damn. We trending wise last year, technically speaking, in advanced stats kind of would speak for that themselves. And it's more that this defensive line, I think, is definitely, it's one of the few position groups that we have where actually you can look towards the future besides defensive back, where overall, like, this feels good, not only for 2022, but 23 and 24 too, because we haven't even talked about Joshua Farmer.
If you're not picking up the vibe, we could talk about this defensive line for an hour, easy, because it's the best position on the team. And it's fun to talk about the good positions on the team. It's not fun to talk about the positions on the team that are going to make us cry when we lose games because of them. And this ain't one of them.
No, it's not, but I definitely think it's the strongest group from fundamentally. It's also the strongest group talent-wise. It's also the strongest group depth-wise. And I think that it goes, for me personally, this group, running backs, and then you probably have to go with defensive backs, which we'll touch on next episode, but we're going to actually probably look towards the linebackers now. And today, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show. As always, thank you guys so much for being Locked On Seminoles, your first listen each and every single day. And also, we are now on YouTube, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as well. Now, Dave, we are hitting the home stretch here. We're going to talk about probably what might be the sneakiest position group of the year, depending on how you view it, and that is the linebackers. We saw Kalen DeLoach emerge last year as the number one option, but then you go out and get yourself a Tatum Bethune from the transfer portal from UCF. You saw Amari Gaynor kind of grow into his own. DJ Lundy takes another step forward in his development too. But we did lose Chris Marv to be the defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech. We promote Randy Shannon from within to be the linebacking coach / co-defensive coordinator. How you feel about that hire? We'll discuss that a different day, but I think now we're kind of all on the same page regarding the hire. Dave, linebackers, what you got?
All right. So I think we've said this before, but we owe an apology to Amari Gaynor because at the beginning of last season, I think we had set our expectations too low because he had a great year last year. Graded at 70 on defense. And for easily the most maligned position group on this team, over the last 1, 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 years at the linebacker position. Amari Gainer was a bright spot. The dude played 400 snaps and his run defense grade was a 79.4. So he had a great year last year, another year in the system, and surrounded by better talent. I expect him to take another step forward. And you already mentioned the name, but among that talent surrounding him, Tatum Bethune, he's probably going to come in and compete for, if not immediately be the best linebacker on the team. And considering we only play 2 linebackers in an awful lot of sets, having Amari Gainer and Tatum Bethune as your 1-2 at the linebacker position in those 2 linebacker sets, that's a great situation.
You're gonna pull Kaden Lyles in those 1-2 backer sets.
Kaden Lyles is gonna play a lot of snaps, but I'm just saying formationally we play a lot of nickel defense. We play a lot of sets where there's only 2 linebackers in the game, and if the only 2 linebackers in the game are Tatum Bethune and Amari Gainer, that's the best linebacker room we've had in a while. Yes, I expect Kaden Lyles to take a step forward this year. The whole linebacker position, this has to be a net positive. Let me just get that out of the way because it can't get worse. This position has gotten to a point really where I expect nothing. It's not that I expect little. I expect nothing. Like, just don't give up like 500 yards of, crosses over the middle. Just don't do that. And I'm happy. But I expect this to be a competitive position this year. Like you said, could be sneaky good. Your top 3 talent at the position in Lyles, Gainer, and Bethune, that probably would be the 3 best linebackers if you're playing a 3 linebacker set that we've also had in a good half decade. And being excited about linebackers isn't something we've done a lot of on this podcast. It isn't something you'll hear a lot about on other podcasts or just people talking about Florida State football in general. But that is the case this year, I think, barring injury.
So I'm going to push back a little bit. I do think that it's even in nickel defenses, I would much rather have Kaden Lyles out there than Amari Gainer, primarily because I just think I think overall he's a much better player. But I will agree with you. We were dead wrong on Amari Gainer going in last year. And by that, we're saying we didn't expect him to have the kind of year that he did, primarily because he was somewhat of a liability in coverage.
He was.
I mean, last year, Amari Gainer, he wasn't the best in coverage. I mean, PFF has him as a 55.9, but that's still kind of a step up from actually what we had him last year.
Mm-hmm.
And his pass rushing was 66.8, tackling 74.3 for an overall grade of around, I want to say 70 flat. I think if that's actually the number correctly.
Yep.
My thing about Tatum Bethune coming in is that he actually is a legitimate pass rushing threat from the linebacking spot. Out of 334 linebackers last year, he graded out as the 49th best linebacker in pass rushing at 77.3 for UCF. I know it's the American. I know we're not a big group of 5, podcast here. Dave can tell you how much he hates every single team that's not in a Power 5 conference, which is how he lives. But with Tatum Bethune, that's someone that you have that actually has the pedigree of playing for a top tier defense, albeit the top tier defense being from 3 to 4 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. But with Tatum Bethune pairing him with Kaden Lyles, it's a very athletic linebacking core right there. And it's also someone that, I feel that FSU fans for the first time in a long time aren't going to be scared of a throw over the middle. It used to feel like that every slant across the middle is like, oh, it's an automatic first down because our linebackers can't cover. But now you have a Tatum Bethune, a Kaden Lyles, Gainer to an extent, but then you also have players that kind of you see stepping forward like DJ Lundy, who is more of your stereotypical, stuff backer, run gapper, but he wasn't terrible last year at that. And he's had another year to improve. And then also you added Brendan Gant from the safety spot, which now, like, if you're only telling, like, he only knows how to do one thing, and that's track the ball carrier and hit. And that's fine too. And that's something that now that we're seeing with the linebacker spot overall, where I am very, very optimistic about this group. And I think also the promotion ranch and to the linebacking spot, where actually he can be a little more hands-on with the players, will actually be instrumental in the development as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And just to put into perspective, the importance of Tatum Bethune being an effective pass rusher from the linebacker spot, that's not something we're accustomed to. Typically, we've had to generate pass rush by pressure on the quarterback by either the defensive line dominating or the more rare covered sack. And having pressure from the linebacker spot, last year we had 3 sacks total from our linebackers and 12 quarterback hurries the entire season, about 1 hurry a game and about 1 sack every 4 games.
Yeah,
That's bad.
that's pretty bad. Yeah,
So
I just feel that bad.
any production in terms of pass rush from the linebacker spot is really going to help out the defensive line. It's really going to help out the defensive backs. It has a ripple effect. So adding Bethune also pushes another guy down the depth chart. Then suddenly you have guys like Steven Dix, maybe, who I still have hope for to be an effective player at FSU. Suddenly he's probably not going to be asked to play as many snaps. A guy like DJ Lundy, probably not going to be asked to play as many snaps, which means they'll be more fresh coming in, which means, I don't know, maybe they'll have some better players to learn from. But I do think that having that depth at the linebacker position too, look, injuries happen. And if, God forbid, Tatum Bethune were to get injured, we have the same linebacker core we were expecting to go into the year with. So, that probably not being the best thing in the world, but we do have Tatum Bethune. And as a result, I expect that entire position, not just because of him, but in large part because of him, to be a lot better than it was last year and probably in the last 5 years.
And not only that, I think like you were saying before, we're going to run a lot more 2 linebacker sets too for a majority of the season, because as we're going to touch on actually next time we're on here, is the defensive backs that we have, it's fully loaded. And I know we're gonna fall a little bit to name syndrome on the next episode, but folks, our defensive back room, I can say it right now, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a top 3 defensive back room in the conference, and it ain't 2 or 3. But folks, thank you guys so much for your love and support and making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every single day. As always, don't forget 5-star reviews, either Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast from. And Dave, hit them with the YouTube instructions.
All right. So subscribe to the channel, please. Turn on your notifications. It'll let you know when our episodes drop. Like the video if you liked it, and go down below. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. Ask us a question. We'll bring it up on our mandatory Mailbag Mondays or Tuesdays, whatever we're doing it. And thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Dave, no, you did not. Yes, that was the first thing I said. That was not the first thing you said. Run that tape back. I will roll tape back. If I am wrong, put it down in the comments below. Actually, doesn't matter because I'm going to cut that part out if I'm wrong. But for Drake, that was Dave. We'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody. I'm back. Are you?